2, 1. All right, it appears we are live. Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and I'm joined, of course, by Tim Picciott of the Liberty Advisor. We are going to go into a whole bunch of news today that is absolutely massive, and also a bunch of news that you're currently being distracted by, because of course all we see in the news is the historic crash of the stock market, the insane amount of printing that we're going to go into, and of course, the coronavirus, Corona AIDS, whatever you want to call it. The COVID-19 is one of the number one things in the story, but we are going to go into some very interesting news today that is also pertinent that we are not being told about. We'll get into all that later, but first, check those links below, hit the like button on this video, comment, and send in super chats. It makes a big difference here at WHAM. We are in the end of one era and in the beginning of a new one. Let's get into the news. Send in those chats, and let's start by talking about the Dow, Tim, because the Dow is, as we speak, at 20,704. It was down to the 18,000s yesterday or this morning, and it's currently up 11.37% today, or 2,112 points. It's ridiculous. That's just, it's unbelievable. It's moving right now, 2160, 2150. This is one of the biggest pumps I have ever seen, if not the biggest pump I've ever seen. The Federal Reserve obviously lowered interest rates as we predicted to, about 0%. And now they have been flooding the markets with money. They have been pushing faulty speculation, faulty, glassy-eyed, greedy, bullishness in a bear market. And it's really sad. It's exactly what we saw at a lesser extent in the Great Depression with JP Morgan trying to pump the markets and get everyone excited after the market crash. People flooded in and lost even more money when it all came down on their heads. And obviously this is affecting millions of people. And obviously at the same time, we have millions of jobs getting wiped out. We have the fact that millions of businesses will be wiped out. We have the government talking about paying for rents around the world, shutdowns, global shutdowns, quarantines. We've never seen anything like this. This is truly, we are living in history, folks. And the trillions of dollars that the Federal Reserve is printing right now is all going to come down on people's heads as well. It's like putting a bubble that's deflating real fast. It's losing, 5 parts. So they put in 2 parts and then it continues losing 5 parts. It's just continuing to deflate, and it's going to land on a lot of people's heads. Inflation is not going to be a good bed friend going forward. Let's go into this first article, Tim, out of Zero Hedge, which says stock surge stalls as Italy admits second deadliest day of outbreak. Now, obviously, the coronavirus has been dramatically affecting Italy and Spain. We've seen videos actually as of today of Spanish police beating people in the streets, even with permission for walking down the street, coming to a place near you soon, especially in places like New York and LA. But Italy did, for a point today, stop the surge in the stock market. And it just shows how easy it is to stop trillions of dollars and insane amount of money. Obviously, they haven't flooded trillions today, but they're talking about $1 trillion a day of bailouts, essentially. And this $1 trillion a day of bailouts is 10 times the market capitalization of Bitcoin in each day. I mean, that's insane. That's like, we're going to just keep doubling the supply, and everything gets less and less valuable, and it's gone. And that's essentially what we are seeing. But I do want to go into a huge story as of today out of Forbes magazine. If you can get up the next article on the screen from Forbes. There it is. So, as the article says, and a lot of people have been talking about this today, coronavirus stimulus offered by House Financial Services Committee creates new digital dollar. And the latest updates are the final version of the economic stimulus package offered by Speaker Pelosi in the House. Democrats no longer includes a U.S. digital dollar proposal. However, the language as proposed by Chairwoman Waters of the House Financial Services Committee still contains this language. Links to the original and updated stimulus bill with the latest language are at the end of the story. So obviously the original story today was that they were going to create a new digital dollar. This new digital dollar would include basically creating this cryptographic quote unquote dollar based on the US dollar. It's something that obviously we've been talking about for a long time. And with 97% of the US dollar being digital to begin with and 3% being so-called private, so-called, I put in quotations. We have obviously this huge push for a cashless society through the banking system, centrally planned, legal tender, all that kind of stuff. We're seeing that in China. We're seeing this coronavirus outbreak really, really push this to the top of, or the forefront of the news cycle. And obviously a bunch of people are falling for it because of fear and reasons, and government said, and the news said. And so they erased the original proposal for the US digital dollar in the stimulus that was offered by the House Financial Services Committee, but it is still in the language as it says from Chairwoman Waters. So the thing is, as everyone talks about it, as everyone talks about how they're proposing this thing, we have to wonder why it was even in there to begin with. Could it be that they are just trying to utilize a crisis in order to enslave humanity more? Of course. Tim, I wanted to
They would
hear
never
from
do that.
What do you think about this? Obviously, it's not in the initial or in the updated version anymore as of 11:45 a.m., but it is still in the wording and the language of Chairwoman Waters. What are they getting at here? What's their ulterior motive? Obviously, there is one.
Yeah, and the point isn't that, hey, it was in the bill and now it's not in the bill. The point is this is a trial balloon that they're sending up there. So then that way they're trying to see what the reaction will be. We also have, on April 1st, Coinbase's former legal officer is now going to be the head of the OCC. So that's the Office of Comptroller Currency. So literally the head of the currency is going to be a former Coinbase person. We know Coinbase has different, some of the nefarious ties. But anyways, when it comes to where things are going, they want us all on a control grid that they can track, trace, surveil everything, tie this in with social credit. And then all of a sudden, people like me and you, maybe not like me and you, but other people are going to self-censor. They're going to be afraid to say things because, if I say things, then the government cut me off. And of course, this is all being done of, we want to help out poor people. And there's poor people who don't have access to, that are unbanked. And so in order to make sure that these unbanked people get banked, we've got to create a digital dollar. But, by the way, that digital dollar is not going to be a decentralized one like Bitcoin. And it's not going to be, private like Monero, it's not going to be public like Bitcoin, where you can see everything that's going on. No. We need to have, and Jerome Powell was actually out maybe in January and had something along the lines of that. So maybe if somebody can find that and send it into the comments. But Jerome Powell in January said that, we're looking into different digital currencies, but they're not going to be on a public blockchain.
Well, I wish I was stubborn. I wasn't so stubborn, Tim, and I would just give in to the powers that be. But I can't sleep at night if I do that. So here we are. In a situation where we won't self-censor, so they attack us more. We get insanely shadow banned, and obviously this has been in the playbook for a long time. Let's go back real quick to the fact that back in the 1970s with Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong, creating the alliance with China, leading into the Trilateral Commission with Zbigniew Brzezinski under Jimmy Carter, leading to today, there's been a push for the cashless society, a one world currency, the SDR, basically, if you will, which is not for the peasants, it's for the wealthy. But nonetheless, you have the Bank of Canada a few months ago saying we have to stop these decentralized cryptocurrencies by creating a central bank currency, digital currency. We have the IMF talking about that. They've been talking about that for years at Davos, and people call us conspiracy theorists. Well, now the fact isn't that it was in the thing, in the stimulus, and then it's not anymore. It's the fact that it was to begin with. Why was it in there? What are their plans? And obviously, this is something that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks as this coronavirus has been breaking out, is that they will use this crisis for their benefit. And we see that in China with them getting rid of cash. And look, they're saying in China, don't touch money, don't touch money. CNN saying, don't touch money, don't take your money out of the bank, because if you do, you might get corona AIDS off of the money. And it's perfect for them. It is a perfect storm for them, and it helps them go into the artificial intelligence system, the technocracy, the facial recognition, utilizing things like Facebook. Of course, we talked about a year ago when Mark Zuckerberg was going to China and helping them develop facial recognition and tying that into social credit. Australia has been going cashless, and as I said for a long time, when they go negative, when we go into negative interest rates, as we've seen in Japan, as we've seen in Sweden, then is the time that they really go full force on the cashless society, which means if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's a bank's. If your money's always going to the banks via digital transactions and legal tender laws, it's never your money, it's always a bank's, and you are essentially enslaved to the banking system. That's exactly where they want you. They want you in debt. They want you in servitude. They want to track every payment you do. They want to be able to enforce their will on you. It's like a really bad episode of Black Beauty.
And let's not forget that now they don't even have to hold on to any of your money in the bank. So it was already, if your money's in the bank, that is a basically that's access to their creditors have access to that money. So let's take a look at what's gone on in the past 3 weeks. We've seen the Fed has reduced rates down to 0. And this is going to take a while to read just off just the bullet points here. They've reduced the reserve requirement down to 0. We've had 3 different $500 billion 3-month term repos. 2 days ago, we had $185 billion in 1 day of QE. I think yesterday was around a little over $100 billion. They've said the Fed is willing to do unlimited action to support these markets. They're buying mortgage-backed securities, buying treasuries. They're outright monetizing the debt, which we were able to track that through QSIP numbers. They're buying muni bonds. They're buying corporate bonds. They're using stock as collateral, which is technically isn't the Fed buying stock, but if you're giving them stock and they're giving you cash, and you're holding onto the stock. Okay, that's okay. Maybe it's not the Fed buying stock, but yeah, it's the Fed buying stock. The Financial Accounting Standard Boards said they want to change how banks compute all this, how they account for all this stuff, because they don't want to show banks show bigger losses. There's going to be a 2-year blackout on the repo operations of knowing where that money went. You've got a 6-month window on where we won't know where any of that bailout money went. They're now trying to get the digital dollar, which, something we've been warning about all along. And then I was showing up on screen right here. This is the Bank of International Settlements. They have tons of different research. Here's a 34-page report from March 12th. This was 2 years ago on central bank digital currencies. And so this is where they want things to go. For those who don't know, the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank above the central bank. During World War II, they had, I think it was 84% of all their profit came from the Reichsbank. And how the Reichsbank paid their interest was in gold. How they got their gold was taking it from the fillings of Jews and other people. And yet you had Americans. I think the guy's name was Thomas Picciott, who was, I think, a former JP Morgan guy, who then was working right alongside people who are literally signing off Heil Hitler. And so, it's like,
I can't wait for someone to cut that little audio clip out and show. Tim Picciott says, and it shows just a clip of you going, I'm not saying it. I'm not going to say it because you guys are going to get me. But anyway,
no, but yeah, you go back and they were actually, so here's guys, they're out having coffee with each other at the water cooler, and and they're sitting there in Basel, Switzerland, as because that's who run things. The Bank of International Settlements, almost everyone talks about the Fed, talk about the Bank of England, the ECB. BIS, it's above that. At some point we should even do a show just on the BIS. I just finished a book on that. But yeah, that's not what we're talking about today. But the thing is, these people are dead set in having a digital currency, and this is where things are going. And it's so obvious of what they're trying to do. They're trying to get us to get in this digital digital control grid, where now if everything is digital, they can then institute negative interest rates, and then they start stealing money from you, and then trying to then social engineer you and say, oh, well.
Or what, people like Mario Draghi said just 2 years ago when he was with the ECB saying, now it's Christine Lagarde, but at the time he said, we are looking at getting rid of depositor insurance. It barely got covered by anybody at the time. But if you get rid of that and you have bail-in regimes, which is written into the budgets of multiple countries, and we've seen it in places like Cyprus, then what happens? What happens when there is no money in the bank? There already is basically no money in the banks. So what happens when you have a bail-in regime and you have a cashless system that's completely tied to the banks? This is, again, different from a decentralized, privacy-oriented, system of cryptocurrencies not based in any government regulation.
And speaking of bail-ins, and this is something that I found an accident. It was August 2014 on the federalreserve.org website. Of course, now it's hard to find. It used to be super easy, just type it in. But it was Stanley Fischer, who's a former, I believe he was the chair of the Bank of Israel, an Israeli citizen, and then who was then the vice chair of the Federal Reserve. And he said that what we need to do is the bank needs to issue bail-inable long-term debt. So essentially that they just take a haircut, AKA they steal your money. But now they're not even doing that. What they're doing now is they're buying corporate bonds. So instead of having the bondholders and the bond vigilantes coming in and seeing some actual day of reckoning, they're not allowing that day of reckoning because they're getting bailed out. And they're even directly buying up the actual corporate bonds and buying up them from the funds themselves. They're going to the ETFs and buying them from the ETFs. So then that way, because what happens is there's something called interest rate risk. And that's, so let's say you've got $1 million, 10-year bond, rates go up 1%, your $1 million is now 900,000. Now you're still getting your, piddly amount of interest. You're still getting your, $30,000 a year of interest off $1 million, or maybe even less nowadays. But the thing is, you have 2%, the rates go up 2%. Now you've got, because of compounding, around $780,000. And the thing is, by the time you get your money back after 10 years, all the horses have left the barn, and almost every senior, no one's ever retired into a rising interest rate environment. So they can't have a rising interest rate environment because we have way too much debt, and it would crucify everybody. But then there's unintended consequences if they leave it low, because now how are the pension funds going to pay out? And so they are damned if they do, damned if they don't. Everything is checkmated right now. So this is the end game. This is the end game. This is
one of the craziest things we've ever seen before. Tim, we're going to go right back to you. Make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already, guys. Those of you watching, and thanks for the super chats. We're going to get to the super chats soon. And obviously, you can become a client of Tim Picciott below. You can check the links in the description and help out Wham in many ways. But you can become a client at thelibertyadvisor.com, and obviously join our new newsletter at iamband.com, where you can submit your email and text Wham to 71441 for Tim's crisis retirement report. We're going to go into much more of this, as well as the monetary system right away and coronavirus right away. But first, Tim, I wanted to ask, bail-in regimes, bailouts, I mean, is any of this possibly sustainable? Can it even work? Even with the amount of communist central planning that we are witnessing today, can any of this actually succeed for the establishment? Or am I getting more concerned than I really should be that this is just they're going to be committing suicide with all this? Or I feel like it might be really well planned. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you said work, and then you said for the establishment, because it's going to work. It's just a matter of who's going to work for. I remember when Neil Kashkari was getting grilled in 2008, and one of the senators at the time said, "I know you're working hard. I just don't know who you're working hard for." And now he's at the, of course, the Minneapolis Fed chair, who just recently came out and called us QE conspiracist for trying to say there's some sort of correlation between the stock market and central bank asset receipts. So, that's pretty cute. So John Snice and we did a video a few months ago. It was called The Case for No More Recessions. And yeah, that sounds like a crazy title. However, what is a recession? A technical definition of recession is having 2 negative quarters of GDP. Well, what if you just go and all of a sudden you could start bombing all these countries, or you start putting, trillions of dollars in for this or that? You could game the GDP to make it not negative, which would then technically not have 2 negative quarters of GDP, but it's all based on BS stats, BS statistics. And Josh mentioned that number, that 71441. If you guys text Wham, so you'll get my book, where I wrote a book on how it's rigged. It's only 18 pages. I could have made it 200, but why make it 200? I wanted to make it so people actually read it. And if you guys know it, give it out to your friends and family. Other thing that's in there is a presentation from last year's Anarcho Boca 2019 called Crisis Retiring. That was the blueprint. If you're 55 to 65, you just retired, that was the blueprint on how to get through this. And that blueprint is held up remarkably well. That's evergreen content. Highly recommend. People paid hundreds of dollars to be in that presentation, thousands of dollars if you count how long it took to get down there and all the research took down there. It's available for free. Text that number. Also is a way for us to stay in contact with you guys. But yeah, do you want to go on to some of these articles now? We've got, we can get.
Well, before we go into more of those articles, Tim, I want to quickly bring up something that was sent to me on Telegram earlier, which is as of 19th March 2020, COVID-19 is no longer considered to be a high consequence infectious disease in the UK. And this is from gov.uk, high consequence infectious diseases, HCID. And you can source that, guys, for yourself and look it up. On the 19th of March, they said that it wasn't a high consequence disease. And then right after that, they cracked down insanely, locking people 70 and over in their homes, possibly up to, they're saying even as much as 2 years, which is so messed up. I can't even put words to it. And then the next day, Mike Pompeo said, we're in a live exercise here to get this right, live on air, which you can find at www.ndtv.com in one of their most recent articles. But I mean, a live exercise, I've been thinking a lot about this. Can it be just a massive exercise for cashless society, for forced vaccinations, for the vast amount of printing, communist central planning, seizure of private property, which we're seeing everywhere, the closure of all businesses, make government the main business, the causing divide. People are going to be attacking each other out of food. They're dependent. They've gotten people weak. It goes to that old saying, weak men create bad times create strong men create, and it goes in a circle. We find ourselves in this cycle of good and then bad and good and then bad. And the good times create weak men, and then the weak men create hard times, and the hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times, and it just goes in that circle. I want to get to some of these articles right away.
Pretty soon here, we're gonna have the closing bell here any second, and this has been the best day since 1933 right here. So this is
quote unquote, and Trump is definitely going to be like, we have gone the best day. Just like last week before it crashed even further, he's like, it's a great day for the stock market. I'm like, how can anyone expect it to be a good day for the stock market right now when you're just pumping it and the whole system's collapsing? No one has jobs.
Is he going to sign it again? Because one of these, I think he signed it, but he showed when it was at like the all-time high, but yeah, the market already crashed 20%. I would love to have that.
What was it, 29,600 and something at the top, and then it's fallen below the beginning of his presidency. And it's not all his fault. It's the Fed's. It's a bubble. It's a bubble that's been inflating for a long time. It's been a recession since 2008. This is just a greater depression than anything we've seen in history.
That's
it will be once it plays out.
I don't care. The first podcast I ever made was he should not take credit for, he should not try to blow up a bubble, because I don't care if Jesus was elected. There are things that are coming that have been brewing that there's no way to stop this. And the worst thing you could do is try to keep it going. I want him to be in there to pick up the puzzle pieces. Instead, it's the worst case scenario, because now you're going to have sleepy Joe Biden in there, probably with Kamala Harris. And then, and then it's just going to be, and then what are they going to do to the economy? Oh, we're going to have, multi-trillion-dollar green new bills, and here they are wanting to put regulations on the airlines at the same time the airlines are hurting. And let's get rid of gasoline and get rid of all this. They're going to wreck things, but they want to wreck it, Cloward and Piven, then come in and rebuild this utopia in their image. I wanted Trump to be that guy that helped rebuild it, for the people. Obviously, we got bamboozled. I jumped off the Trump train the day that Jerome Powell was hired, which is, I've gotten criticized all the way around. I don't even like talking about this, because now, as obviously all my volunteers friends that I consider myself as, they're all, they don't like the fact that I mentioned that I voted for Trump. But it's just a joke.
It's all collectivism in a nutshell. And obviously, Sleepy Joe, all these people, honestly, I think that we're probably walking into a postponed election, though Trump does say that he wants to open the country by April, but New York is saying no, California is saying no. I don't know. He can virtue signal, but we're witnessing something totally unprecedented. As we see the Dow Jones Industrial Average on the screen at 20,704.91, up 2,112.98 points.
So you got your Dow 18,000, Dow 19,000, and Dow 20,000 hats that you can get out of storage. And we do see here the 52-week range was at 29,568, which we basically rang the bell in at the top at Anarcho and made the video where.
Yeah, it's funny. We were sitting there literally at the top, Tim, talking about how this is going to fall. They're trying to give incentive for people to invest because they were desperate, because obviously the stock market crash was imminent, as the title of the video said at the time, and that they were trying to give it tax breaks to people to invest. I mean, which sounds good, but obviously it was a desperate move because they like to steal as much money as humanly possible. We're going to get into the next story here that I find quite interesting. And it was an older story, but it connects to a newer story, and it's from the Epoch Times. And so the Epoch Times article says 21 million fewer cell phone users in China. If you scroll down there, Tim, 21 million fewer cell phone users in China may suggest a high CCP virus death toll. And we keep being told by the Chinese, and obviously we're not going to pay to read the whole article, but it's a very popular story right now that basically there's over 8 million users in about 1 month, and 21 million overall, I believe, just disappeared from the cell phone services in China. And they're saying that they cured. Yeah, they say they cured coronavirus there. All is well, and there's no more problems. And then suddenly all these cell phones disappear. And there were stories of the Chinese possibly incinerating people alive with the virus at the time, and literally just burning people alive. And this actually plays into the cashless society thing I was talking about earlier, about how they can morph and move towards a new world order out of China. which I've been considering for a long time. I think that that has been a goal for a long time. If you go back just to the 1960s and 70s, it is clear that that alliance was being created. It's clear that they've been given right hand to hand, shaking hands by the US and the rest of the global establishment, the ability to monopolize global production, not just because of slave labor, but because they were given that ability to do so. While they had all these tariffs on US goods, the
All done by
US basically
design.
invited their production in. And then they create these smart cities, facial recognition, technocracy, just like Zbigniew Brzezinski planned. And obviously his daughter being Mika Brzezinski, on the Morning Joe or whatever the hell. And then you have Australia, like places like Darwin, mapping out the same thing. Well, this story about the millions of cell phone users going missing also ties into another story. If you bring up the next story off of Zero Hedge there, Tim, which is called China Lied, Released Infected COVID-19 Patients Ahead of Xi Visit to Wuhan, according to a doctor. And many doctors, many people on the ground are saying it's still happening, it's horrible, and they're covering it up. And they covered it up to begin with, which is how it broke out, allegedly. But anyway, as it says, China lied about the number of COVID-19 patients in Wuhan, ground zero for the global pandemic, ahead of a visit for President Xi Jinping's March 10th visit to the region, a local doctor told Kyoto News, as in Winnie the Pooh. As it continues there, it says the same day, China's health authorities reported no new cases of coronavirus in Wuhan. Several symptomatic patients were released early from quarantine, while health officials suspended a portion of testing, according to the report, as relayed by the Japan Times. And as it continues below, it shows, according to the doctor who worked at a quarantine facility, the government's figures cannot be trusted as the number of patients under treatment is being deliberately reduced to show the CCP's success in getting the epidemic under control. The doctor in his 40s, whose responsibilities include determining whether a patient is discharged from a hospital, expressed strong concerns that if the truth remains hidden from the public, another outbreak could occur. Guidelines from the National Health Commission stipulate that patients must test negative for the virus twice and be cleared for pneumonia via a computerized tomography scan before being discharged. But according to the doctor, from around the time of Xi's visit, even though his patients still exhibited signs of pneumonia, the patients were released from quarantine at the discretion of a specialist from the Epidemic Prevention and Control Authority, according to the Japan Times. After the government specialists began releasing patients, the criteria for discharge was altered and a mass release of infected patients began, he said. Meanwhile, interview questions for people exhibiting symptoms were similarly simplified, while a blood test to detect antibodies produced during infection was discontinued, resulting in suspected patients being released back into the community. I am going to go out on a limb here, guys, and say I think they are killing people. I think they're disappearing people, something that China knows a thing or two about.
They wouldn't do that.
No, China, no, they're so nice and cozy with their fascio-communist, like, technocratic state, where if you go on an airplane and you have a bad social credit score, which you can get just from social media or from making fun of the government, they blast a high-pitched blaring siren sound in your ear through a frequency in your seat so that you get a headache and you feel sick and you go crazy. Or they just don't let you fly at all, or you're banned from going to restaurants, going anywhere, having a vehicle, having a home. You become homeless because you criticize the government. Government is always there to help you until suddenly you realize the whole idea was to put them in control over you, get you on your knees begging for help, dependent on this entity that's giving you so much, like a god. And it is one of the greatest evils that we face on this planet. It is the greatest evil that we currently face. It is literally the emulation of pure evil. We're going to get to some comments. We're going to get to some super chats, and make sure to hit that like button. And we're going to go into more stories that you haven't heard yet. But first, I want to go into these super chats. Shinobi Wan sent New Zealand $3.49 and says, yo, happy Corona-chan holidays. And then sent another New Zealand $3.49. Says more beer money for my favorite newsman. Well, thank you so much, Shinobi. You are awesome. Always a great supporter. And I thank you guys so much for your help. As always, Shinobi Wan also sent New Zealand $3.49. It says Rob Sigurdsson breeds truthers, the man. All right. Well, again, I really appreciate the help, guys. Those super chats go a long way. They're the only way we stay alive. And right now, in a time where I have 102 people watching out of 138,000 subscribers, we are shadow banned to death to not notifying the vast majority of people when we're online, despite being clicking to notify. and they're not suggesting us on the side anymore. They've cut us down about over 90%. They don't want this coming out because we are in an age of pure propaganda, pure evil. We are in an age where we do not have information at our fingertips anymore. We have selected information, and we are here to try to defeat that as best as we can. But obviously, they forced me into a position where here I am fleeing to Mexico. I'm living in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I left all my property behind. I left my vehicle, my house, everything behind, all my property except for some clothes, my laptop, and my camera stuff.
Well, it really is world alternative media. So we've got, now we've got all of North America covered over here with all the contributors. And so if we want to help, so it looks like your dad needs to get busy again if he's breeding out all these truth fighters. So maybe Rob needs to get some more done to help fight the cause. But no.
Anyway, yeah. So I really appreciate everyone sending in those questions, hitting that like button, all that kind of stuff. Shane Karubi says, lol, have fun, still be a bit careful. Absolutely, always good to be careful. Ultimate says, just tuned in. Any idea if it was 10,000 5 grams being switched on in, or 5G in, switched on in Wuhan? Well, I think obviously 5G affects people's immune system. I don't think it caused this issue, but I definitely think that it can aid the issue. It does affect the immune system, as studies have shown, but I don't believe that it's all leading to this directly. Like, it's 5G that's creating it. But yeah, it definitely doesn't help your immune system to be next to a huge magnetic radioactive tower that's literally, they need hubs in front of everyone's house to keep them on and keep them running. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. But anyway, make sure to share this on social media. Hit that like button. Jay Mueller says your live streams don't show up in the newsfeed. Of course they don't. And they don't, half the time they don't even show up on my own channel. I share them on social media, but I'm so shadow banned on Facebook. I'm shadow banned everywhere else. They've just basically, they want me to self-censor. They want me to go crazy. They want me to get paranoid. They want me to go broke. It's financial terrorism. And I will never, never negotiate with terrorism. So here I am. We continue on and we keep walking forward.
That's why I call Bernanke Osama Ben Bernanke, So.
Yeah.
Which is, he's probably done more damage to the economy than Osama bin what's his name? Because that whole thing, Tim Osman, all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, do we want to get into the other things that are going on that are being sneak attacked while everyone's paying attention to?
Well, yeah, and I do want to first, before we do that, I want to quickly mention that gold today hit an all-time high versus the peso. I am here in Mexico. I feel like it's worth bringing up. All-time high versus the peso. The peso is crashing like a rock. So is the US dollar and the Canadian dollar, but it's just a race to the bottom. The peso is falling faster. But anyway, I want to go into some stories that we have not been told about. Make sure to hit that like button and, send us super chats if you haven't already. It's literally the only thing keeping us alive right now. We're basically demonetized. But anyway, in a story that nobody is talking about, as this Congress.gov article says, HR 5717, Gun Violence Prevention and Community Safety Act of 2020. It's always safety, the public safety, the greater good of the greater number.
We care about you.
This bill is insane. This bill is basically eroding what's left of gun rights, as coronavirus is obviously allowing, with state of emergencies, martial law, for many states to try and stop the sale of guns. This bill is crazy. To break it down to a degree here in a very simple way, because obviously they make them long for a reason, so you can't understand them. What this bill is essentially a gun grabbing bill on steroids, and it proposes a 30% tax on all firearms sold, plus a 50% tax on ammunition. Think about that for a second, guys. That's basically bringing up the price just an enormous amount, 50% on top of the existing price, a tax on ammunition. I mean, it is hugely detrimental to people's ability to stock up, especially in this time when guns fly off the shelf. Ammunition is flying off the shelf because people expect there to be food wars. They aren't going to get fed by FEMA magically when they can't even produce food. So people are worried that they're going to have to defend their food from the toughest guy on the block. It's like I've always said, food, water, shelter, self-defense. So you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And that comes from a Bill Burr routine, a comedy routine from a couple of years ago. I also want to mention that in this bill, they mentioned that you need a license to touch a firearm, but you need to touch a firearm to get your license by taking a class. So that's pretty confusing wording. How do you take that class if you can't touch a firearm and it's illegal to touch a firearm without the license?
That's exactly how they got marijuana to be illegal. Is it came from, there was something called the machine gun stamp act or something like that, where you, in order to get a machine gun, and this is back when it was first written, so I don't know how it applies today, but you had to have a machine gun. But in order to have a machine gun, you'd already violated the law. And that's what they did with marijuana too, is that in order to get so technically marijuana wasn't made illegal. You had to give a marijuana tax stamp, but you had to have the marijuana in order to get the stamp, which means you've already committed the crime. And again, maybe things have been changed, but that was how it was written in like 1937. And that's a whole nother story of how that stuff went down. But yeah, this is
it's crazy, Tim. I mean, I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because obviously we are seeing this massive power grab, the biggest global power grab that we've ever seen in history. We see this cashless society coming in, control of all money, spying on everyone, facial recognition technocracy as they buy up properties. They seize people's properties and force people into their homes during coronavirus outbreak. That was clearly engineered and weaponized. And then on top of that, they're printing trillions of dollars. They're going to hyperinflate the price of living. They've got, the idea of forced vaccinations. All the while, Tim, they put everyone in cages in their own states or in their own countries. They shut down all these businesses, hundreds of millions worldwide, millions of businesses gone. And then when everyone's trying to buy things to protect themselves, they take the last bit of independence away from people, the last bit of freedom left, and freedom being responsibility, and responsibility being, I have a right over my own body as long as I enforce that right over my own body. And by enforcing it, I have to defend it. Tim, where do you think they're going with this?
I mean, where they're going with this, I mean, the two things that I've been pressing for the most, or that the two things that I've been the biggest stalwart on of trying to stop, was this move towards a digital dollar that we're seeing right now, because I know it's going to be married with social credit. But guess what? Even if they do that, the fact that we have 350 million guns in America or something like that, is a big checkmate. And so they have to get rid of the guns. They have to get rid of our freedom. They have to get rid of everything it is that supposedly makes us Americans over here. And to me, holding the line on the Second Amendment, holding the line on everything we're going on with the digital dollar is the most important thing in the world. And just a reference, I do have some meetings coming up at the top of the hour. And so so those meetings are either done by Zoom or phone call or Signal. And when you go to my website, you're getting me directly. Now, probably if you see this 2 months from now, it's going to be getting funneled off to other people underneath me, because as things have been going, luckily really well over here, because we've had the performance. And so if you guys want to go to those numbers, go to thelibertyadvisor.com, you schedule directly with me, linked into the phone over there, which somebody has one coming up. So let's we want to fly maybe through some of these.
Yeah, well, so as I'm going to be cutting these out and putting up in reports, I'm going to cut up that a little bit there. But another thing that they're utilizing in order to silence us, stop us from speaking out, stop us from fighting back, which is a responsibility of all free human beings, is this end-to-end encryption and law enforcement access to data that they are basically cracking down. They're trying to essentially ban the ability to secretly speak with each other, to have privacy, which obviously privacy plays into property rights. It isn't a given. No rights are a given. You have to protect them. Like, you shouldn't stand in front of an open window with a light on at night in your neighborhood, butt naked, and expect no one to see you. I mean, that is an infringement of your property or your privacy or your property. It is if they go on your property and start looking in your window and, doing looking in, and you're not responsible for that. But with that said, when you want to encrypt things, this isn't going to work, guys. First of all, just like guns, people are going to make them in their garage. It's never been more easy to make guns. It's never been more easy to find guns. It's never been any more easy to 3D print guns. And then at the same time, to stop encryption on phones and computers, good luck, guys. Good luck stopping that. Well, I mean, it's just so futile, but nonetheless, a lot of people, like a bunch of slaves, are going to bow down and walk off the cliff with the rest of the cows that have been, stampeded off. And honestly, I believe that this will come down to, obviously, or possibly, people getting together and innovating and creating new things like we've never seen before. And this will lead to great new inventions. This will lead to great new innovations that will replace the old guard system. The government keeps shooting themselves in the foot, but for now, we're in pure, unrivaled slavery like we've never seen before. It will take people innovating, creating evolution, not revolution, basically replacing the old guard system with the new system to mitigate these problems that people want to be free naturally. Unfortunately, too many are indoctrinated into the collective to bow down to the state because they feel dependent, they feel scared, they feel comfortable in their ignorance. But I think they will fail. I'm going to be optimistic about that. I think they will fail long term. But in the next couple of years, these are going to be very hard times, folks. And that's why we need to stand up for our ability to defend ourselves, the most basic function of us as human beings, to speak freely, to have privacy, to have property, to not succumb to this insane communist racket where they're printing currency, legal tender, social credit, cashless society. Break free, good people, break free. We'll be back with you guys with much more on this subject soon. Now, Tim, finally, there is another story that's coming out that no one is talking about. So if we can bring up the New York Post article.
Got it.
Now, here's a story that literally no one's talking about because all you see in the news is coronavirus and, you know, the insanity of the stock market crashing and all that. Epstein Maxwell wanted me to have surrogate baby, according to Virginia Roberts. So obviously Virginia Roberts has been in the news a lot. We've been hearing all about her run-ins with people like Prince Andrew, who has been ruined, but we'll see what happens after the whole coronavirus epidemic blows over, if it ever does, and how everyone will have forgotten about the fact that Epstein didn't kill himself. Clearly, one of the biggest elite pedophile rackets, which involved blackmailing, possibly from Mossad, possibly from the CIA, was just pushed to the side by another news story. Don't be distracted. This is very important. We need to keep this going despite the craziest news in history happening. There's other things that also matter that we need to keep on. And obviously, we've heard that Ghislaine Maxwell has just sued Epstein's estate. And there's a whole bunch of conflicting stories. Is she in Israel? Is she in Brazil? Where is she? Well, let's get into this next story also regarding Epstein, which is from the Daily Beast. As it says, Epstein claimed Harvey Weinstein tried to assault one of his girls. The two notorious predators were reportedly friendly until Weinstein allegedly made an aggressive sexual move on one of Epstein's girls. So we have, like I was talking with him on the phone earlier. The pot calls the kettle black. Basically, Epstein was mad that Weinstein was attacking or assaulting or trying to assault his girls that he was assaulting and selling off to elites so that they could get blackmail on powerful people, politicians.
Now that's when you know it's now. That's when you know it's bad, when you're getting called out by Epstein for being too over the top.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest story in the news right now regarding Weinstein, obviously he's in jail for decades, possibly, unless he gets let off early. I don't know. I think he'll probably die in there. But he also got coronavirus. He's been diagnosed with coronavirus. But, I mean, there's more to this. I mean, it's not just that. There's a bigger story at hand here. His connection with Epstein, his connection with Clinton, both of them having connections with Clinton, connections with Trump, connections with all of these huge celebrities, Oprah Winfrey, who's been getting a lot of trouble lately. There's a lot of connections with Kevin Spacey.
And you get a bailout, and you get a bailout, and you get bailed out. No,
these people are so sick, Tim. These people keep getting together, and then everyone looks the other way when they virtue signal about how women's rights, we need to respect all women, believe all women, all that kind of stuff, and then they get involved. Even the people that came out against Weinstein, including, I forget her name, the woman that was married to Anthony Bourdain, was found in pictures sleeping with an underage kid who she played the mother of in a movie when he was 10. I mean, these people are sick. What do you think makes Hollywood so disgusting and, places like Washington, D.C. so disgusting that this keeps coming together like a puzzle piece?
Asia Argento or something like that.
Right.
I didn't know that. I had to go DuckDuckGo it, so. I don't know.
What do you think, Tim? What do you think? I mean, like, obviously there is a pattern here of the elites in both Hollywood and Washington having connections, maybe because of propaganda, maybe because they're all working together to spread the same ideas and make people slaves. I mean, what do you think? Why do we keep hearing stories about these pedophiles in Hollywood and Washington alike? Dennis Hastert. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, Dennis Hastert was actually in the Podesta emails, and what was crazy is I remember doing like a vlog on top of a mountain back before I really started doing this stuff, and I mentioned something, and I mentioned the thing about Hastert that people in general would get mad about me saying and I was using the F word. I won't say it here, but I'm like, people say that will get more mad at me for saying the F word of Danny Hesser was effing little boys than the fact that he was effing little boys. And then that same day, by coincidence, like an hour or two later, it came out in the Podesta emails that Podesta and Hesser were still in communication even after all this stuff. Then you get into like the Maria Abranovich, the spirit cooking, and the, oh, hey, we're gonna have a bunch of hot dogs and all these code words of all this other stuff, and all that got buried, and all it was, oh, look who did it. It was the Russians, even though, it's very likely that it wasn't the Russians.
It's right out in the open. And then you have Hillary Clinton talking about sacrificing a chicken to Moloch in her backyard. You have the connection with Prince Andrew, and obviously it wasn't just Epstein and Prince Andrew. I mean, he was also connected to Jimmy Savile, who also his brother, Prince Charles, was heavily involved in Jimmy Savile. In both cases, the Buckingham Palace told ABC News not to share the story about Epstein.
And he was like the Mr. Rogers of the UK, just so people know, like what.
Yeah, he was top of the pops, all that. Everyone loved him. The BBC knew for decades that he was the biggest pedophile in the history of the world, really, because he had so many hundreds and hundreds of victims. And the BBC covered up for it at the behest of Buckingham Palace was involved in covering that up. How many times do we have to see this story pop up before we say, I wonder if there's a connection? ABC, Disney, BBC, all these news networks, these Hollywood stars, the business people, the politicians, the royal family. I mean, at one point we have to say, there's a connection. These people are working together. This is really sick. And this is why we're not hearing about this. This is why we have been completely distracted from it. We're not talking about Epstein anymore. And we need to be talking about Epstein because it was bringing a lot of the house down. The puzzle pieces were coming together. We need to start talking about Epstein. We need to start sharing the news about Epstein again. One person mentioned in the live chat, as this is originally recorded live, that, he doesn't think that Harvey Weinstein even has coronavirus. This is just so that he can get out of prison and hang with his friend Epstein in Tel Aviv. Well, we don't know about that, but
hang with his friend. So if there's
hang.
But anyways,
not.
I do have this video recorded, so it's going to end up getting processed. So I do have to get going because it's probably going to take 5 minutes to process it, and I've got a call coming up at.
Okay, so let me end this off. So anyway, let's get on this. Let's keep pressing this narrative, pressing this news. We aren't talking about these stories enough. There's a lot more in the news than coronavirus and the economy. We will continue to report on this stuff. Stay tuned for more. I'm here in Mexico. It's hard for me to do this stuff. I don't have a good computer. So make sure to press like on this video, send in super chats, and look at the description below and help us out any way you can.
Send them a new computer too, if you have one.
Yeah, please. So I can do this stuff more without depending on other people. But I really appreciate everyone tuning in today. And check those links below. Thumbs up. I got to quickly go to these super chats. Shinobi One said, last one, stay alive, brother. And you too, viewers. New Zealand, $3.49. Thank you so much, Shinobi. You are awesome. And my dad also sent a super chat somewhere here at $5.49 Canadian. Says, have a rum for your immune system. But of course, things are going well in Mexico. I'm going to be getting you guys a vlog video right away on what's happening here in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta. It's much different. The fear mongering isn't the same, but people are being responsible. So I'll get back to you guys with much more. This is a prison planet. This is the apocalypse, but let's create a new world.
Somebody just sent me something pretty funny. My buddy Dr. Frank just sent me. It was from a bookstore. It goes, please note the post-apocalyptic fiction section has now been moved to current affairs. So,
oh my God. Yeah, seriously. Political sciences. Anyway, I appreciate everyone watching. Hit that like button and share this on social media. It is not a good time for WHAM, so we need your help now more than ever. We are reaching almost nobody here at World Alternative Media. Anyway, until next time, I really appreciate everyone joining. Check those links below and find us on flote.app, flote.app, at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at WHAM and at The Liberty Advisor, and become a client of Tim's by checking out thelibertyadvisor.com. So much more. Just $1 or more a month on Patreon helps a lot. Thanks, guys. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.